Welcome back to Behaviorally Speaking, Leadership for Changemakers, the podcast where we explore leadership not as a title, but as a set of behaviors that shape people, systems, and futures. Today's episode is a powerful one that truly gets to the heart of why we do this work. The conversation brings behavioral science and compassionate leadership together to build stronger systems, schools, and communities. I'm joined by Dr. Jim Connell, Associate Professor in the Drexel University School of Education, Founding Director of multiple graduate programs, and a leader whose work sits at the intersection of behavioral science, education, systems change, and social responsibility. Dr. Connell is someone whose leadership journey is as human, humble, and honest as it is inspiring. During our conversation, Dr. Connell shares his personal and professional journey from military service, his early days working at the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard, to sobriety, to building nationally recognized programs in ABA and school psychology. Throughout our conversation, we explore what leadership looks like when it's grounded in listening, choice, opportunity, performance feedback, and compassion. Dr. Connell also shares how perseverance, guidance, choice, and compassion have shaped every step of his leadership. This episode is rich, it's real, and it's full of stories that remind us that leadership isn't a title, it's behavior, a set of actions, a way of showing up for others with intention and heart. This episode challenges us to rethink how we lead, how we mentor, and how we create environments where people can truly find their path. Let's get into it. All right, Jim, thank you so much for joining today's episode. I'm so happy to have you here with me. How are you feeling coming into today's conversation?
I would say I feel pretty normal. I've done some press before and have been interviewed before, so I feel okay.
Wonderful, thank you.
We'll see how it goes.
Yes, we'll see how it goes. Thank you. So can you share for us, Jim, how your professional journey into school psychology, applied behavior analysis, research practice, and instruction at the collegiate level influenced your current leadership?
Yeah, so, it's a really long tale. I've been around for a little while, but I would say I was late to go to college, so I didn't go to college until after I left the military. And then after I left the military in '88, I worked a couple of jobs, including down at the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard. And at the shipyard, they were getting ready to close down the shipyards when the Philadelphia Department of Defense was currently running the shipyard, and they sold it. And so I was working on the last aircraft carrier before they closed the shipyard. And at the time of them closing the shipyard, I was going through some pretty significant personal issues. So I was drinking a lot and ended up getting sober. Haven't had a drink for about 33 years now. And when I got sober, leaving the shipyard, and I wanted to pursue a childhood dream, which is odd that, a child grows up, and when you think back on it, it's not so odd anymore, but odd when you think that a child wants to be a psychologist rather than a fireman, a policeman, or a doctor, or a nurse, or an educator, or something like that. I went to be a psychologist. So I went to the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation and asked if they would help me get into college. And I opened up a small electrical business, and I worked at the University of Pennsylvania campus for a lady who owned a bunch of tenement buildings, and OVR gave me some funding, and they paid my way through the first 2 years at CCP. And I was on my way. And then I transferred to Temple, where I was obviously going to be a psychology major. And I took all the psychology courses, developmental, social, COG, all the different disciplines within psychology, and none of them really made much sense until I took Phil Heinlein's class, an undergraduate class. I had Phil Bursch, who was actually around before Heinlein, who was a classical conditioning psychologist. He was a Pavlovian. And I took Phil Heinlein's class. And when I took Phil Heinlein's class, and even when I took Birch's class, Dr. Birch's class in classical conditioning, I think the world sort of made sense to me. I said, I understand sort of what's happening in the world. And so, or how to interpret the world. It made sense to me looking through the behavioral lens at what was happening in human behavior, what's happening in the world. And so Phil had a graduate level course, and that graduate level course is working with the rats, and he let in occasionally undergraduates into that course. And so I went to his office one day and I begged to be let into that course, and he let me in, and then I worked in his lab for the remaining year and a half that I was at Temple, feeding the rats and the pigeons and working with his doc students and the other psychology majors that were in there. But I didn't want to be an experimental psychologist, and Phil was largely an experimental psychologist. And so I was looking for opportunities to work with people. And at the time we were so lucky to have Children's Seashore House, which had the biobehavioral unit, where behavior analysis was applied in real world settings to people who needed a significant amount of support. And I went and applied there, and I got a job working at the BBU, and an amazing experience working at the BBU. I met amazing people. Bud Mace was there at the time. Joe Lally, God rest his soul, was there at the time. Tim Vollmer was there. Pat Progart was there. Lee Kerm was there, all at the same time that I was there. Yeah. Plus a bunch of graduate students and hoping to be graduate students. So Joel Ringdahl was there, John Barrero and Carrie Barrero were there. And, big names in the field. So I was very, very lucky. Yeah. And I worked there for a couple of years. And Joe Lally was, I had two supervisors. I had one who I looked to and one who I was assigned to. I was assigned. And so Joe was the one that I looked to. And when I went to Joe and I said, I want to, I want to go on to graduate school. I want to help kids in schools, which, tracks back to my early childhood. I think in psychology, they would probably define me as a wounded healer. So I wanted to go back into schools and work with and find kids like me, right? The kids that were falling through the cracks and that nobody was paying attention to, and they were exhibiting all kinds of behavior problems, and people just thought, that I was a bad kid. Right. So Joe had a couple of ideas, and LSU was the one that I decided on, and I basically drove down to Baton Rouge and met Joe Witt a year before I got into the LSU school site program, and said, I'm applying to your program. I'm applying to be your graduate student, and you're going to let me in. What do I have to do to get there? Yeah. And I started working with his graduate students while I was a substitute teacher in the East Baton Rouge Parish schools for like 7 of the 9 months the kids were in school. And I took over a second grade classroom, worked with Joe's graduate students on research that they were doing in RTI. And then I applied to the program and got in.
Wonderful. Jim, I really appreciate your candidness. That's such a rich experience of your history, but I get the word perseverance coming to me and not taking no for an answer, like really being focused on what you want to do. So how does all of those experiences you just shared, including your path to sobriety, like really shape the way you approach leadership today?
Well, I think perseverance, the word you used, Esther, is the perfect word. I think if you want something, you have to work for it, and there are going to be barriers in the way. But there are also, and here's the critical thing that I remember, which goes to your question about leadership. There were also super, really, really important people in my life.
Right.
And those people helped guide me. And support me through that process. They listened to what I was interested in and what I wanted to do. And then they try to figure out how to help me do that.
Right.
So, I was, dead set on getting there, but it wasn't up to me, right? There are other things that have to happen. There are other people who have to be in your space, and there are other opportunities that have to arise that you have to then take advantage of. So I think that I'm largely here because of the support of people I met along the way and my drive to give back to, the kids who don't get that chance to find those kids and to try to help those kids. And so that was my drive. My drive was, I'm going to go back to schools and help kids.
Yeah.
But I needed guidance and support and opportunity to get there.
Wonderful. So you said that was your drive. You needed guidance, support, and opportunity to get there. But the one word you said was listening, right? So in all of the episodes I've done so far, the common theme is listening, like active listening. But you also said listening and then guiding you, right, how to get there. So I think it's important as leaders that we're not projecting our experiences and our wishes and desires onto others. Like for me, also including my own daughter, right? So I think they listened to what you wanted to do and supported you in getting there. So that's a big message I'm hearing from what you just shared.
Yeah, they listened, and then, right, so when you have the perspective that they have, which is that they've done this before, that they're more experienced than you, that they've helped other people move and progress through their careers as well.
Right.
They have a certain amount of knowledge and experience that you don't have.
Right. Absolutely.
So the folks who I think were most instrumental, there's a couple of different ways. I had lots of folks along the way, some of them not so nice and some of them very supportive.
Right.
The ones that were very supportive were the ones who set guardrails. And the guardrails for me were kind of broad, right? Okay. They were wide. Okay. And so I had a lot of room to bounce around in between those guardrails. And I think the folks who supported me and guided me and directed me gave me that latitude to bounce around. And then when I was getting off track, then the guardrails would go up and say, right, here's what your focus is. And now you're over here. Where do you want to be?
Yes.
And for the folks who weren't so supportive, most of them just said, you're not going to be able to do this. Who do you think you are?
Yeah. No, you can say, this is who I thought I was, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So then, Jim, from all of your behavior analytic experience, right, my push, in all of this that I'm doing with the podcast, it's really that leadership. It's a behavior, right? It's all the things we do together, the actions we engage in that makes up, our approach to leadership. So from your perspective and from a behavioral science perspective, how would you define leadership?
I don't really know that I have a good definition of leadership.
Yeah.
I would have to unpack the word, right? So we need a good operational definition of leadership, right?
Yeah.
So what is a good operational definition of leadership? You could get as many responses to that as people you ask.
Right.
So,
and you have to say,
yeah, right. So, I guess I've already explained sort of the leaders that I admired.
Right. What were some of the specific behaviors? You said guiding.
Maybe I can unpack that a little bit.
Yeah.
So, and maybe I can do that through example and then maybe extrapolate from there.
Yeah.
I had, when I was at the May Institute, I went to the May Institute for my internship, and I had the good fortune of working on the Positive Schools, which is a PBIS dissemination program.
Right.
They had a big office of special education programs for PBIS. And so I learned from Bob Putnam and Marcy Handler, PBIS. And I learned a lot from both of them. But Marcy was probably, I would say, the best supervisor I had, because she had those guardrails up on me, but they were broad. And she would provide me with opportunity, which is another way of saying she would provide me with choice.
Yeah.
Right? Opportunity is choice.
Yes, yes.
And she would provide me with instruction in the areas that I didn't know and give me room to grow in those areas by seeking my own information. So she would provide choice about where the opportunities were to get the information that I needed or the skills that I needed.
Yeah.
And then she would put on the guardrails when needed, which helped me be a better listener and a better consultant. And there was one meeting in particular. I was meeting with the Providence School District, Providence, Rhode Island School District, public school administration, and the senior administration for the middle schools, because we were implementing PBIS in all the middle schools in Providence, Rhode Island. And we're having a meeting, and as you can imagine, and as in many PBIS meetings, you start saying things, well, we want to, reinforce or reward a student for engaging in appropriate behavior. And you get that pushback. Why should I, reward some kid for doing something they should already be doing? And right. And so you get into those sort of conversations with staff who don't see the world the same way that you do, who don't understand behavior and reinforcing behavior the same way you do.
Right.
And so we're in this meeting and we're sort of going back and forth. And I'm starting to sort of feel my oats as a consultant and as a PBIS consultant. Yeah. And I decide that I'm going to say something. And it was the wrong time for me to say something. And Marcy very quietly put her hand on top of my hand to get me to be quiet. She didn't say anything. She didn't kick me under the table. She didn't make an example of me in front of other people or even scold me afterwards. Yeah. She quietly said, "This isn't the time to talk, Jim. This is the time to listen." And that was a really good, that was 20 years ago. Yeah. 21 years ago. And it stayed with me ever since. So you can't possibly understand the barriers that people have in front of them to implementing, to doing something different than what they ordinarily do, unless you listen to them and watch them. Yeah. And if there's anything that you learn from being a behavior analyst, is that you have to observe. Yeah. And you can't observe if your mouth is running.
Yes. That's true. I love that. You can't observe if your mouth is running. Absolutely true. And you identified so many specific behaviors in what you said. It's like providing choice, setting or establishing guardrails. So other words that come to mind is like setting limits, establishing expectations, but making sure those we lead are aware of them and they understand them. Silent correction, right?
Yeah. So if you understand Marcy's gentle hand on top of my hand as a indication to shut your mouth. Yeah. it's a punishment procedure. Right. But it was done with compassion. Yes. That's right. And it was done with understanding. What do I need to do for Jim to understand this? And what was the least intrusive procedure to use? Yes. And so, if you operationalize these things, they function as contingencies because life is just full of contingencies. Everything is contingency.
Exactly.
And so I think if you were to break all this down into behavioral processes, right. It really is about what are your opportunities? What are your choices? Yes. There are two, right? And you can think of choice as simple. Right. I have a favorite poem, Robert Frost poem, "Two roads diverged in the yellow wood, one traveler long I stood." Yes. And somebody says to me, and sometimes people say, well, which one did you choose? As if you have free choice at that moment. And somebody else said to me that made me think quite a bit about that, and which is super interesting. And that is, what do you have? You have to choose, but you have to choose from two roads. Right. Who put those choices there? Why are there only two?
Exactly.
So when you think about choice and opportunity, and you think about kids who are well off and kids who are not well off, some of them are looking at two roads, and some of them are looking at 50 roads. Right. And all of those roads have different contingencies of reinforcement.
Along the way, yes.
Along the way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it multiplies itself, right? It might be two roads, but along that road, as you're saying, there are multiple contingencies. So multiple opportunities, multiple paths, right? That we can still then choose from. Yeah. Yeah. So it's really rich. It's really rich.
It's really rich. Yeah.
So in all of that, Jim, how does database decision making strengthen leadership effectiveness? So like for me, I'll give you an example. I like to collect data on incidents, right? Graph them so I can, I can analyze, how many incidents are occurring per month, but, across different classrooms, across different environments, different teachers, right? And then I use that to then go back to support my teams, but then I have the data to guide my conversations, right? So what's your take on using data? We talk about data a lot in instruction and in schooling, but like even in leadership and supporting our staff, what are your thoughts on how we can strengthen us as leaders?
Well, I think you have to set goals, right? So what is it that you're going to monitor? What data are you going to collect and why?
Yeah.
Is critical, right? So I think that depends on sort of, again, back to listening. What are your personal and professional goals?
Yeah.
So if you were, right, so when I ran the A.J. Drexel Autism Institute Clinical Core for the 8 years that I was there.
Right.
My leadership style was basically focused on what are your professional goals and what are your personal needs to help you get there. Because, right, so that sets that sets a goal, right? Then you have to identify the steps along the way.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're going to have to move in stepwise fashion. It's going to be either a shaping procedure, or B, a sort of a stepwise increase in either effort or responsibility or something. So and then there always has to, Esther, there always has to be that opportunity. There always has to be that other choice that that is provided for as a leader for you to offer your team that keeps them moving in the the way they want to go. So I'll give a couple of examples. So I was a clinical core director at the Autism Institute, hired a team of people. Some of them were PhDs, some of them were clinical psychologists, some of them were BCBAs. And my first question to them, after deciding, through the interview process that we were going to hire these folk, was, what is it that you want to do? What do you want to do? Can you identify your reinforcers? What do you want to do? And then each one of them would say, I'm interested in this, I'm interested in this, I'm interested in this, and let's figure out how to do that. Which then, for me, becomes an opportunity to develop projects. Right? So one thing that I've always been fairly good at is developing projects. Developed the clinical core at the Autism Institute. I developed the ABA program and the school psychology program. I like to develop things that are needed. But a lot of that development comes from the interest of other people. What is it that you want to do? So the ABA graduate training program at Drexel University was born out of that.
Yeah.
There were people who worked with me, Bridget Blakely in particular, who's still, she works at the Drexel School of Education, the ABA program.
Right.
She was instrumental in creating that program because she wanted to be, faculty and then there's Bridget Garvin, who's over at St. Chris now, running the behavioral health office, and she specified all the way. I've got an interest in doing this, and I've got an interest in doing this, and that developed into a project with St. Chris, which then developed into not only a position, but she's over there running a large shop right now, doing amazing work.
Yeah.
And again, my role in that is to listen to the answer of the question, what is it that you want to do?
Yeah.
And then to try to find the opportunity, given the position that I had, to build that pathway.
Yeah.
And then the reinforcers are there for you. All you got to do is engage in the behavior.
Yeah.
So I think, as far as like leadership I'm fairly hands off with broad guidelines that really focuses on where do you want to be, and then how can I help you get there?
Yeah.
And then measure your progress along the way. Well, we've done this, and this is one step in the process. We've done this. This is another step in the process. Some of those require team, right? So when I left Penn and went to Drexel and negotiated on my way in the start of both of those programs, the ABA program and the school psychology program, but I can't do that by myself, right? That needs a team of people.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And there were people around me who were interested in the same thing. And so then you have to put together a budget model and a proposal. You have to put together, mock syllabi, and that requires a team of people. But all of those people are focused on the same thing. They want to build an ABA program at Drexel University.
Yeah.
Right? And some of them have identified that as a reinforcer. Those reinforcers aligned with my reinforcers. It becomes, it gathers momentum. It gathers behavioral momentum. And so I think, and there's been a rare occasion when I've, where running up against the guidelines resulted in, some kind of punishment procedure, but it certainly has been there along the way. Every now and then you have to yell at a graduate student who's just like that. You're way off target here.
Yeah.
Let's get back to what we're doing.
Back to basics. Yes.
Yeah. And that's common, right? Your graduate students, you're like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And so they see, and the great thing about that is they're identifying that they're seeing multiple paths in front of them.
Yes.
And again, that's where the guardrails sort of come in, because their focus was to get a PhD, and you have to, and to do this type of research in their PhD process. And so you have to sort of, guide back. Here's where we are. This is what your goals are. Unless those goals have changed, this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I love everything you said, specifically the questions of where do you want to go? What do you want to do? And how can I help you get there? Right. So it's that personal interest and investment in those that you lead and support. And, you gave all the great examples of people who started, under your leadership and are now in other places, doing what it is they wanted to do. So along the way, you also talked about feedback, right? Like, all right, you want to get to the PhD, but how can I help you get there? And how can I support you along the way? And even in your research, you talk a lot about performance feedback. So Jim, from your perspective, but from your experience and your research, why is performance feedback such a powerful leadership strategy? I mean, I'm even thinking of the silent correction, the tap on your head. That was feedback in the moment, right?
Yeah.
Why is it such a powerful leadership strategy?
I recall from Phil Heinlein's class learning something that was really, really consequential at the time and remains so to this day. And that is that people say do correspondence is not really good. Right? They say things they don't do, and they do things that they didn't say they were going to do.
Right.
And sometimes there's not a lot of overlap between what you say you're going to do and what you're going to do. And, then you have to look to the external environment. And the internal environment, the external environment, what are the barriers preventing you from getting there? Are they real or are they perceived?
True. I love that. Yep.
Can we overcome them? Or is there something else that needs to happen here? Some other type of intervention that needs to happen here. So, lost my train of thought.
So you're talking about feedback, like.
Oh, feedback. Yes.
Yes.
So the feedback is critical because people say they want to do something. I want to get a PhD. I want to be a faculty member. I want to do this type of research. And then they go off, then they get down this road, and then they get down this road, and then they get down this road. And you say, okay, do you want to get a PhD and do this research, or do you want to do these things because what you're doing are these things? That's performance feedback, right?
Yeah.
That's agreeing to, right? So in performance feedback, if you just break it down into the early OBM or the early school psych literature.
Right.
I've got it. Here is our concern. This thing is not happening. Here is a strategy, a technique, an intervention, an evidence-based intervention that can help you put that in place. And then and as we all know, in order for the intervention to have any chance of being effective, you have to put it in place.
Exactly.
You have to have treatment fidelity. You have to have intervention fidelity.
Yeah.
So if you're not checking back to your fidelity, is this the intervention that we put in place? Do you want to graduate with a PhD and seek faculty positions and do research? Which, and here are the steps to get there, the intervention to get to that long-term reinforcer. If you're not checking back and saying, is your performance matching the intervention and your goals? If you don't do that, you could just have students who are just all over the place, right? They're winding around. That's how you have students who don't graduate with their PhDs for 10 years and spend, 6 years sort of lost in, right? Because there's no guidance there, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There's no goal, there's no guidance. there's no identified reinforcers or the procedure to get there. So
Right.
I think so. And of all the reinforcer or all the interventions that I've seen in my time as a school psych and a behavior analyst, there are a handful that I would say are fairly robust interventions. Performance feedback as a strategy where you say, here's the intervention, here are the steps in the intervention. If you follow the steps in the intervention, we can evaluate whether or not it was effective and then go back and say, are you following the steps in the intervention and what are the outcomes of that? If you do that, that is a robust intervention. It has worked with, I'd say, 80% of all people that I've used it with.
Yes.
So it's a robust intervention because it helps. I think it helps folks realign their understanding of the contingencies that they're working on.
Right.
Right. So you're over here pressing this bar, and this bar is tangential to where you want to be, and you're over here pressing this bar, and this bar is tangential to where you want to be. Now let's have a conversation. Here's where you are. Here's where you want to go. Here are the steps to get there.
Yeah.
Are you doing that? Because if you're not doing that, then it's unlikely you're going to get to where you said you wanted to go.
Right.
And then Esther, then it becomes up to them, right? And those contingencies of reinforcement might change. They might say, I don't know, I sampled this thing over here, and I think I like this more.
Yes.
And this is more reinforcing for me. And I have a really good example of that. I have a former student, who was in the school psychology program at Drexel. Okay. And they got into the IQ achievement and, other assessment classes. And they said, I'm not really sure this is what I wanted to do. I don't want to test kids.
Yeah.
I want to be part of intervention and helping kids. And so they shifted from primarily in the school psych program to the ABA program. And they graduated from the ABA program, and then they started their own companies.
Yes.
And now they're providing behavioral health to adults. And this was like 3 years ago, and one of them has already hired 11 people.
Wonderful.
So you have to be able to, as a leader, you also have to be able to understand that when these opportunities are presented.
Yes.
And they said, this is the thing that I want to do, but then they sampled this other stuff.
Right.
Well, those other reinforcers might be more powerful for them.
Absolutely.
And so their path changes. And as a leader and as a supervisor, right, that's them, right? That's where they are.
Right.
And I can say, here's the intervention that we had in place, and here were your stated goals. And they can say, and as a function of being here, I had opportunity to experience this reinforcer and consume this, and I like this more. Yeah. And that's going to be okay, right?
And it's okay. I really love everything. Yes. And that's okay. I love everything you just said because, it makes me think of this conversation I often have with staff. Like, say, for example, they resign. That's okay, right? Because they're following the path of where they want to go. Oftentimes they apologize. I'm like, no apology necessary. I can support you in getting from where you are to where you want to be and being exposed to different contingencies. I say it all the time, Jim, like you were exposed, as you said earlier, to other opportunities that you would have never been exposed to had you not, followed that path. It makes me think of my daughter too. So she's at Temple. She started out in broadcast journalism. She was like, yep, this is what I want to do. But in her very first semester, she took an elective in business and loved it. And she switched, right? And now she's really happy with where she's at. She's doing financial planning, things like that. But she was exposed to that opportunity, that contingency, that stronger reinforcer, as you said. So it's really being able to encourage people, help them identify the opportunities and take advantage of it, but support them along the way, right? Without judgment, Jim, right?
Without judgment, which I think sometimes might be like difficult to do because you might be thinking, no, you're making such a mistake, Yeah. You might be, right? Are you sure you want to do this? And
right.
But you gave them the opportunity to experience these other reinforcers, and they did, and they found one that was better for them.
Right.
Right. This reinforcer is more salient for me. It's more powerful for me. I'm going to do this, but you take it to a different level, which is a crazy level because you are taking it to your kids, and I have 4 of them, 4 beautiful kids.
Yeah.
And I love them to death. And I want to keep them. I don't want those guardrails to be as loose as they are for the folks who are under my supervision.
Yeah.
I want them to be tight, you know?
Yeah,
I don't
exactly.
want to, and that's not really a good approach, is it?
Yeah, no.
Like,
It's
they're people
something
too, and they're
they're
going to find
people
their
too.
reinforcers.
Yep, and they're going to find their way, and I'll be here to support you. You know, whether
Yeah.
you fall a bit, you step back a bit, it's okay. I'm here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I had to come to terms with that a lot, Jim. Yes.
Yeah. I get it. That's the but the blessing out of that, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, the blessing out of that is that you learn what unconditional love is.
Yes. Absolutely. Unconditional love, unconditional support. Yes.
Unconditional love,
right?
unconditional. Yep. And I approach the people that I supervise in the same way. Not to say that it's unconditional love, but it's like, I'm going to support you because it is the right thing to do. Now, that's very moralistic and it's very sort of person centric from my perspective.
Right.
But you can look back to Skinner, you know, creating Walden too, and creating societies where the reinforcers fit the people, and and you know, creating you know, more better society through the use of reinforcement contingencies. So
and it's, Jim, to me, it's that the reinforcers fit the people, but can they access them? It's a bigger question for me, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. Can they access them?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Opportunity is everything, Esther, right? The opportunities that our kids have are everything. And if we don't provide as much opportunity as possible, then they're going to have just those two roads, and neither one of them could be good ones.
Exactly. So on this topic of like resistance to change, right? So it's making me think of, you know, your conversation with on your children, my conversation with my daughter, like she wanted to change, you know, I wasn't resistant to her wanting to change. But let's flip that conversation to staff, right? Or even students in our courses. How do you approach staff or student resistance to change, right? For me, some of the things I do is, you know, I'll have conversation, I'll gather feedback, get their input, things like that, right? So they have a say, and I always like really emphasize the why, Jim, right? Instead of just saying the what, but like, here's the why, so they understand. What is your take on resistance to change?
Well, it's much like working with a teacher or a group home staff member or anybody else, right?
Yeah.
What are the barriers? So when you look at performance feedback, you say, here are the steps. So let's agree that we can agree on the steps to the intervention. Right. Somebody says, I'll do that. Here, you say, here are your job responsibilities in the position that you have. And they say, okay, I agree to that. That's what I'm going to do. And then you hire them. Right. And then you find that some of those things they don't want to do. Right. What is the resistance to doing these things? The only way to come, from my, you know, experience and perspective, the only way to come to that conclusion is through dialogue. You have to identify the barriers. Yeah. Sometimes the barriers are external. We talked about that earlier. And sometimes they're internal. Right. So, you know, the internal ones are tricky. Yes. We proposed, the external ones are a little bit easier to identify. I don't have the resources to do that. Right. I don't have the skill to do that. The intervention doesn't match the concern, right? So the external ones are a little bit easier. The internal ones are about private events. Yeah. And in radical behaviorism, we acknowledge that, you know, covert behavior is behavior all the same, right? So emotions and cognitions are covert behavior, and they are behavior. Yeah. If you can think it, it's behavior. If you can do it, if you can feel it, it's behavior. If it happens, it's behavior. So it's behavior. The problem is that in behavior analysis, is that, you know, which sometimes I find a bit disingenuous, is that they then say, but, you know, since we can't observe it, we can't study it. You know, that's true, technically. But, you know, when I was at Penn, we were looking at a social psychology framework called the theory of planned behavior, or the theory of reasoned action. And I kind of liked it. Yeah. So the theory of planned behavior is that behavior is downstream of three things in this theory: attitudes, norms, and self-efficacy. Mm-hmm. The attitude being, what do I think about this?
Yeah.
So I ask a teacher, do you want to, will you reinforce, this kid's hand raising rather than calling out? Why should I reinforce that? He should be doing that already.
Right.
That's an attitude. Why should I reinforce a kid for doing something that they already do or they should be doing? Right. So that's an attitude. I don't believe in reinforcement.
Right.
Norms. The rest of my grade level doesn't do that. The rest of my coworkers don't do that. Right. So there's a norm. So I'm not going to do it. And then self-efficacy, I don't really have the skill to do that. And if you think about those as consultation targets, so if you could identify, is this an attitude or a norm or self-efficacy, then you could put the right intervention in place. Because a norm, if you have a group of second grade teachers who don't think that use of reinforcement is appropriate for kids who should be doing something they should already be doing, blah, 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 then you have to address the group.
Yes.
If it's a specific attitude about that, then the consultation is targeted to that individual. And then you have to use, then for me, it's back to the Socratic approach. Tell me what you don't like about that.
Yes.
Tell me what you think happens as a result of that. Had you considered that if you do it this way, this might happen?
Yeah.
Right? So you have to go through the Socratic approach because you have to pull out. I think you have to tease out what is the attitude that's preventing the action when you think about this.
Yeah.
So I think that in order to get people in order to respond to a resistant behavior that a supervisee is not doing, cleaning the toys after an ADOS assessment, putting the forms away. I think right, and that constantly happens, and the other coworkers are annoyed and they're complaining to you every time this person finishes an ADOS. They don't clean their room, they don't wipe the toys down, they don't put the protocols away. You have to begin with a conversation, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So, and it's always done with the supportive approach,
right?
Rather than an evaluative or punishing approach, right?
Right.
So here's what we agreed to. Mm-hmm. When you joined here, here are the responsibilities that you agreed to. Here are the ones that are not happening. Can you help me understand why they're not happening?
Yeah, I love that. Can you help me understand why?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then sometimes those conversations get a little tense because now you're calling people on a behavior that they might feel, they might be defensive about. And so it's really critical to not get into that defensive space. And if you come across as being either, not so much evaluative, but critical or hypercritical.
Yes.
In the evaluation, then they're immediately going to be defensive, which is not a troubleshooting, problem-solving model, right?
Not at all. Not at all.
Not at all. Now this person's defensive and they don't want to respond. And
right.
And so I think going through the approach, going through the conversation in a truly sort of open dialogue about what we agreed to, what's happening, and what are the barriers to getting that done, helps illuminate sort of where the cognitions are, where the private events are that are impeding the completion of those tasks, where the resistance is. And I don't think you have any chance of changing resistant behavior without understanding it unless you superimpose contingencies that override that, which I think happens all the time.
Yeah. And I think it's all about the conversation, like you said, Jim. And then you mentioned private events. We would never know what those private events are. We would never fully understand it unless we sat down and had the conversation, right? Here's what we discussed. Here's what's happening. Help me understand, why this is happening now, So I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
But then, Jim, also thinking of like a growth mindset, right? And continuous improvement. I'm curious as to your take on how we create a culture of growth and continuous learning and improvement. So I teach a leadership course at Gannon, and I was just, grading some assignments before we started this conversation. One of the assignments they have is every week in the discussion board, they have to post a leadership quote and reflect on it, right? So two of the ones from what I looked at this morning, one was, a leader takes people where they want to go. A great leader takes people where they don't necessarily want to go, but ought to be. And this one was by Rosalind Carter. And another one that was shared that I graded this morning was, a good leader inspires people to have confidence in the leader, but a great leader inspires people to have confidence in themselves. And this one was from Eleanor Roosevelt. So I guess my question is, sometimes I've come across a lot of people, Jim, and you have too, right? You've supported them to get where they are now, but they're not really seeing like, this is something I could do. So I always like to mold and have the conversation and nudge and help them think about it. And then, at some point they come to the realization that, yes, I can do this, right? But it's us recognizing this is where they could be, us recognizing we need to help support their confidence. I remember, Jim, us having a feedback session with one of the staff at Elwyn, like it had really centered on her confidence, right? So how can us as leaders create a culture of continuous learning, continuous improvement, helping people get from where they are to where they could be, but helping them see those contingencies and those doors and those paths that we see that they can't necessarily see in the moment?
Yeah. Your quotes are interesting. I'm not sure I agree with all of them, but,
okay.
I think, complicated answer. I think,
yeah.
So there were, let me start here. There were certainly many people who didn't think that there was any chance I was going to get to where I was, to where I've gotten.
Right.
I could point to you, I could throw a stone at somebody who said there's no chance Jim Connell is going to get past 30, let alone be a PhD and a faculty member at a university.
Yeah.
So I think but I believed that I could get there.
Okay.
So I think it requires me to believe in them that they can get there.
Okay.
Even if they don't believe in themselves at the moment.
Right.
For those people who do believe in themselves and do believe that they can get there, it's about reinforcing the steps along the way. So I use reinforcement a lot.
Okay.
But it's subtle and it's thoughtful, and it reinforces the key steps along the way to where they said they wanted to be. Coming up with the dissertation idea, coming up with a new project idea that could bring funded revenue, right? Finding a way to reinforce those ideas that come up as a function of a transitive emergent relation in their brains.
Right.
Hey, if we did this might be really beneficial. And that came from their experience in a transitive emergent relation. Can you reinforce that? Because if you can reinforce that and it's successful, that builds their confidence. So if you can reinforce coming up with a dissertation idea, if you can reinforce coming up with a project idea, if you can find the funding, the opportunity, the pathways, the avenues to pursue that, and then have them go through the work, the reinforcer becomes not just you, becomes their success in doing things that they say they want to do.
Yeah.
And my goal is to try to pave that path in front of them, or to clear the brush and let them pave that path in front of them and then reinforce along the way.
Yeah.
So, but like when you think about programmatic reinforcement to staff, like any other reinforcer, it's not going to come across well if it's not authentic.
Right. True.
And so there's always sort of that thing about, can I be programmatic in my reinforcement of, proposing your dissertation, coming up with a research idea, coming up with a project idea that is a good idea, that is, that's doable. Can I reinforce that in a way that sounds real and authentic?
Yeah.
And if you feel that, right, which gets back into the fuzzy stuff.
Right.
If you're truly concerned about other people and helping other people, reach their true potential, if you're really concerned about that and using contingencies and opportunities and choice to help get there, if that's the kind of person that you are, then I think the reinforcement is always authentic. You're generally interested in their success.
Yes. Yes.
And you're just letting them know that, and then providing the opportunity and the steps to get there, and then, putting in the, so there's two things, right? You create the behavior trap. They say they want to do this. You help them do that.
Right.
They come into the contingencies of doing that and feeling successful in that process. That's a behavior trap. The behavior produces then reinforcer. Now you start building your confidence, and you start building your skill, and you start building your experience. And all I have to do is say, man, that was really impressive. I'm really I'm really happy that you suggested that. It really turned out well. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
That's not right. That's authentic. It's real.
That's
and
authentic,
it's also,
yes.
and right. And it's also, you know, a reinforcer. Who doesn't want to hear that from their supervisor when they're trying to develop a career or, you know, move through the ranks?
Yeah. Wonderful.
And you have to remember to do that. It's so important to do that. And I think so few supervisors, you know, you get your annual review and they tell you, oh, you did this well and you did this well. We really enjoy you. But there has to be more than that.
Yes, there has to be.
There has to be. You know, teachers go to school and work in second grade classrooms every day and have 22 kids and one aide who, you know, has, you know, a high school degree and doesn't know much about education, is just trying to do the best that they can. And if you don't pat those teachers on the back every once in a while and say, I really appreciate what you're doing for these kids, it means so much to them and it means so much to me. Like, it's a tough job.
Yeah. And it goes back to that feedback, right, Jim? Constant.
Goes
ongoing.
Back to that feedback. Yeah. You're doing good. You're doing good work and it's worth it.
Yeah. And being truthful about it, right?
Yeah.
And being truthful and honest, I think, is very important, right? But if we develop that relationship and that pathway where we have conversations and we engage with our staff and we let them know how they're doing on a constant basis, right? I feel like we're building trust and we're building a culture where we can continue to support them and they can continue to improve, right? Yeah.
The truthful and honest thing that you said, I think, is really critical too. So when they're messing up, you have to be truthful and honest there too, and just say, hey, listen, and you right, passive aggressive doesn't work there.
It doesn't.
You know, using other people, like you've got to sit down with that person and say, here's what's going on.
Yes.
And here's the concern, and we need to fix this.
Yes. Yes. And how can I help you fix it? Right.
And how can I help you fix it? And how can we work together to remediate this problem?
Yeah. Wonderful. Jim, I want to talk about neurodivergence a bit. So, our world is diverse, right? And so now in leadership positions or in job environments, it doesn't really matter where, in school environments, this has been historical, but what suggestions can you offer on embracing, neuroinclusion in leadership teams? So like removing barriers, real or perceived, as you mentioned earlier, for neurodivergent professionals seeking leadership positions, right? And then encouraging neurotypical leaders to support our neurodivergent colleagues. What support can you offer on this topic?
Oh, this is a complicated topic because I am not exactly sure where I am on some of it.
Okay.
It's emerging, right? So when I went to Drexel, I helped reorganize the Drexel Autism Support Program. The name of that has changed, but that was one of the responsibilities that I had coming in, was to help sort of redefine what this is and get it moving again. And the Drexel Autism Support Program is support services that are offered for kids who are coming to Drexel University who are on the spectrum or neurodiverse.
Right.
And so there's varying levels of support that those students need, like all students, right? Varying levels of support for all students, not just students who are neurodiverse, but the neurodiverse students might have a specific kind of support that's needed.
Right.
Right. So helping the faculty and other folks. So one of the things that I did when I was a clinical director for the Eastern ACERT was to talk to the Philadelphia International Airport about how to making the airport more neurodiverse friendly. It was a big project that we had with them. It ended up including a project search. They ended up hiring students who went through search at the Autism Institute down at the airport, who I think are continued to be employees to this day, full-time employees with full-time benefits, everything.
Yeah.
And so I think for like any other type of exceptionality, as Craig Newshafer liked to say, that is in the minority. Right? There's not a lot of it.
Yeah, there isn't. Yes, true.
The rest of the world needs to change too. I'll give you a really good example of this.
Okay.
If you go into an elevator and you touch the buttons, there's going to be Braille there.
Yeah. Yeah.
The rest of the world changed for people who are sight impaired.
Yeah.
Wheelchair ramps on public buildings.
Yeah.
The rest of the world changed for people who
Yes.
require wheelchair access.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a kind and just world.
Right.
So then you have to say, well, we have this neurodiverse population, and according to the DSM observations, written books, chapters, thousands upon thousands of research articles, there are some social and communicative barriers that might impede successful leadership positions. And EF, right? Some executive functioning barriers. First thing you have to do is make sure that any intervention that you're working with in the neurodiverse population has intervention support. People call that ableism. To get to where they want to go.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the world there has to be an intervention that the rest of us are aware of as well.
Yeah.
So I think, like, when you're creating, like, let's say that you're creating an intervention for a second grade student.
Right.
Who's got an academic or behavior problem. You can easily go to any peer-reviewed publication and find which intervention is going to be most successful for a kid like this in a classroom like this.
Absolutely.
Who's got this kind of problem, right?
Right.
So you have your one intervention.
Right.
And that's for the kid. But then you need the other intervention. And that's to get the staff to do the intervention.
Yes.
This is the same thing at scale. So you have folks who are neurodiverse.
Yeah.
Who might have some repetitive behaviors that seem, out of place in some settings, or communication styles that seem out of place in some settings. And maybe you're working with them to soften that a little bit, soft social skills.
Yeah.
And at the same time, the rest of the population has to be aware, which I think it's an education process, that this might come a little bit different than it has in the past. You might get a slightly different version of communication style.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a big intervention. That's a societal intervention. That's a cultural shift. And that's where we still have, no idea about what it is that we're going to do. No idea is probably a little dramatic, but, we're not just going to put Braille on the buttons inside an elevator or wheelchair ramps and everybody's fine, right? It's going to take more than that.
It takes more than that, yes.
Yeah. And, then you're talking about societal, cultural change, and God, the society that we live in today is pretty fractured. The cultures that we live in today are pretty fractured. It's hard to imagine scaling, that. But, I think, but I would approach my supervision and leadership in the same way.
Right.
Perhaps with different interventions, which is, what is it that you want to do, and how can I help you get there?
Yeah.
And here are the known interventions that could perhaps support your progress along the way.
Right.
And the extent to which we put them in place and then evaluate them through progress monitoring, data collection, as you indicated.
Yeah.
Is the extent to which we can evaluate whether or not you're getting to where you want to go.
Yeah.
The interventions might be different, but the compassionate approach. I always would go back to, you ever see that TED talk by, what's his name? I don't know how I'm forgetting his name. But Father Flanagan's guy.
I know who you're talking about. Yeah, I'm blanking on his name too, but I know. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really a compassionate behavioral approach. Like, where do you want to go? How can we help you get there?
Yeah.
What are the interventions? Let's not assume that I know everything that's going on. There are other things that are going on.
Is it Pat Freeman?
Pat Fryman, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Fryman.
Pat Fryman,
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that TED Talk because it just makes you understand that you're not aware of all the contingencies that are operating on other people's behavior. And unless you sit back and take a compassionate approach and a compassionate understanding about the contingencies that are operating on other people's behavior, you'll have no chance of understanding how to help them.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I really love his speech. I use it a lot in like professional development sessions, but I always hold on to that baby in the backseat, right?
Yeah.
Concept, like, cause you
Yeah.
just never know. And it's like, assume, like compassionate all the time. Like there might always be something going on. And as you said, Jim, unless we take the time to have the conversation and ask the questions, right?
Yeah.
How can we support? And how would we even know? We wouldn't know.
How would we even
honestly.
know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I absolutely love that TED Talk. So to close us out, Jim, you shared so much rich information today. I made notes, and so it was helpful to me too. But what are 3 leadership takeaways that you want behavior analysts, educators, community change makers, anyone listening to walk away with from our conversation today?
3 leadership skills or experiences that I'd want them to walk away from.
Yeah.
Or with. First of all, it's not all about you.
I love that. Okay. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's not all about you.
It's not all about you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we grow narcissists in this country like we grow grass.
Yes. Yes.
It's not all
That's
about
true.
you.
Yeah.
So if you're lucky enough to be in a leadership position, then the goal for you to be successful is for your staff to be successful.
I love that.
And so if you realize that your success is dependent upon their success, then your primary reinforcer should be their success.
Yeah.
And therefore your job is to make sure they're successful.
Yes.
And you do that through choice and reinforcement. I mean, it's sort of that simple. Reinforcing along the way. And, and a healthy level of experience with all of this is also helpful, because if you'd have asked me that question 20 years ago, I wouldn't have had the same answer that I have today, or maybe even 10 years ago.
That's true.
But, if there's anything I learned, is that it's not about you. And if you're truly concerned about doing good in this world and doing your job well and being successful, and we're in a different kind of business, right? We're in the human service business.
Yes.
We support people, right? Other people sell widgets, right? So, but even if you sell widgets, there are people who work for you, and the extent to which they're successful, you're going to be successful.
Right.
So how do you make sure that they were successful? We have to give them opportunity to be successful, give them support they need to meet that success, and reinforce it. I think it's that simple. Exactly. It's that simple. It's also that complicated.
Oh, true. Yeah. Because there's a lot packaged in that.
Yeah. There's a lot in that.
Yeah. So I love that. It's not all about you. And then if you're lucky enough to lead, the goal is for those you lead to succeed, and that's how you'll be successful.
Yeah. I mean, even if your success is that you've produced successful people. Like the goal wasn't really, right? In that situation, the goal isn't really my success. It's that there are other people who are out there being successful. Again, we work in a great field where it's concerned with human service. And so if you have successful people who've worked underneath you, they're out helping people too. Right. And if that's not a reinforcer for you, you might not want to work with, might not want to be in the human service, industry.
That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah. So if that's not your identified reinforcer, but if you sell widgets, the extent to which your staff are good at producing widgets is, and if it's the job they like to do, then your goal is to help them be successful. Yeah. And I don't think there can be anything greater than helping somebody else up.
I agree. Yeah. Because it's reinforcing you, right? That track.
Yeah, and maybe it's making, and you hope, fingers crossed, Esther, that you're making a better world.
Yes. Yeah. Even if it's just one person at a time, right?
Even if it's one person at a time.
Yeah.
I tell all of my school psychology students every year in the first year, make sure you say something uplifting and reinforcing and, caring to the student that you work with today. Yeah. You have no idea how much that one statement on that one day could impact any one of those kids.
Yeah. Just be kind, right? Just be kind.
Just be kind.
It's not that hard. It's not that hard. Yes. Well, Jim, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. I learned a lot, and, once our listeners hear this, I'm sure they will learn a lot from it too. So I really appreciate your time and all the work that you do.
Yeah, so thanks so much for asking me. It's been wonderful hearing your voices again. I feel like it's been so many years at this point.
It's been years, yes.
Yeah. I always enjoyed working with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're one of the good people, Esther. You're one of my favorites.
Oh, thank you.
Always,
that means a lot.
Always doing the right thing. You're a good person.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thanks for asking.
Likewise. Yes, you're welcome. Have a lovely day.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning in to Behaviorally Speaking, Leadership for Changemakers, and joining this powerful and deeply human conversation with Dr. Connell. His story reminds us that leadership is a journey, one built on listening, reinforcing growth, creating opportunities, and believing in people even before they believe in themselves. Jim, thank you for such a rich, honest, and thoughtful conversation. This episode reminds us that leadership is not about control. It's about creating conditions for growth, for choice, for feedback, and for people to discover what truly reinforces them. From the power of listening, to the role of performance feedback, to the importance of offering broad guardrails instead of narrow paths, this conversation gives us practical and deeply human insights into what effective leadership really looks like. To our listeners, if this episode resonated with you, share it with a colleague, a mentor, or leader who's shaping others. And visit Behaviorally Speaking, Insights for Changemakers, the blog accompanying this podcast, for deeper reflections and takeaways. Keep showing up with compassion. Keep leading through behavior, not just intention. And keep choosing actions that build a better world. One person, one system, one community at a time. And as always, remember, leadership is behavior. What you do matters. Until next time, keep leading with intention. This is Dr. Bubb. Stay inspired.